Hi everyone, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. You thought that there will be no more videos from me during this week. You were wrong. Here is another one. I've speculated just a little bit recently about the Chinese peace plan that they will roll out, and they did. And it was even more emptier and useless than I was expecting. Wow. So let's talk about this and I will discuss you everything why this plan is a complete nothing burger, non-starter, and let's just have some fun with it. Point number one, respecting the sovereignty of all countries. And you can make a whole video just about this point, how wrong it is, how hugely wrong it cannot be ever implemented. And let's rule it. Let's read it as it was stated. So it states that the countries should recognize the UN charters, laws, and international borders. Well, if we read it like this, that means only one thing: that Russia needs to get out of Ukraine, and that's it. To respect the UN recognized law. But the problem always is because we know that Russia is a pretend state. They are a pretend dictature. They are pretending that they have some kind of democracy or they're following some kind of pretend laws of their international community. And what are they doing? They've been like, whenever they occupied Crimea, they pretended that this is following some kind of UN international law, and there's like international observers present in that. It's also about like recognition of these terrorist states that Russia has been sponsored and promoting in since 2014. And it's also with the saying that we follow the UN Charter to recognize that Kherson and Zaporizhia and Luhansk and Donetsk Oblast of Ukraine wants to join Russia as well. It's a complete joke. So Russians, they're just going to be. Remember, in UN, it's the Security Council that matters, whereas the kind of the global gathering, the big discussion and vote doesn't really have that much of a specific power on things. So it's more of a discussion platform. So Russia can always say that because there was no resolution of the Security Council, then there was no decision by the UN, and then say, well, how did this happen? Well, obviously because Russia has a veto power and they are illegally, I might add, are a member of the UN Security Council. They are obviously illegally member of Security Council because Russia never joined UN. I know that this might come as shock, but all of the countries post breakup of the Soviet Union, which had the Security Council seat past Second World War, after that, the countries that joined UN by themselves, Ukraine, the Baltic states, and every other one, had to rejoin and send a joining application to join the UN. Russia did not do that. So officially, Russia never, as a country and as a separate country from the Soviet Union, never joined the UN Security Council. So if you, for example, pull the documents about it, you actually find that it is still the seat of the Soviet Union that Russia is occupying. But it can be challenged. Why is Russia taking from the Soviet Union? So that's just a kind of fun thing. But again, we're having just fun here anyway. So overall, the first point is not a starter because Russia will just make up any stories based on whatever point of Security Council of the UN that they feel this day. And moreover, this goes in a whole deep end around the fact that it states that all countries should recognize all sovereignty of all borders, which essentially means that China wants to put it there also that with this peace deal, it's also recognition of Taiwan part of the China, but they are unfortunately shooting themselves in the foot because that will go into all of the disputed weird regions in the world. Like, we don't even want to start about the Israel-Palestine discussion. It's a complete nightmare. I mean, it's been discussed way too much. Point two, abandoning the Cold War mentality. Firstly, I don't know what that means. Does that mean there should be a special commission that's going to check how we're thinking about things? Because, like, one thing is like not doing certain actions. The other thing, as the point states, abandon the Cold War thinking. And obviously, like, what it explains is like that the countries should not join the military blocs this is aiming towards like that Ukraine should be neutral post-war, and NATO should not be expanding. Well, it's a complete nonsense because it is in complete violation with the first point that China presented itself, because it says the country should follow UN law. And by the definition of UN, the most important part of the UN law is that countries are sovereign, and sovereign countries have the right to join any kind of military agreements and defensive pacts as they want. That is the definition of sovereignty. So if countries want to bunch up together in a military bloc, they have the right to do it. So it's a complete contradiction with the first point, and it's again non-starter, and it's just there to be interpreted which way they want, mostly to please Russia about Ukraine not being neutral by definition. Point 3, ceasing hostilities. And the best part about this point was saying that the international community should support Russia and Ukraine working towards the same direction. And I agree completely. That direction being towards the borders of Ukraine. Following the first point, internationally recognized borders of Ukraine is a 1991 borders post the dissolution of the Soviet Union. So Russian troops should be moving towards and beyond the borders of Ukraine, whereas Ukrainian forces should be moving towards the borders of Ukraine. If this is what we are understanding as moving towards the same direction, I agree completely, and more importantly, armed forces of Ukraine are already executing on this point. So we should tell China that Ukraine is already complying with this point. Point 4, resuming peace talks. I mean, sure, I am all for the peace talks and their resumption. The question is, what are we discussing? Because I think what we should be discussing in a peace talks is what's the amount of reparations Russia should pay for the thousands of killed civilians, for the amounts of property destroyed, and it should also we should also discuss how Russia would be moving the criminals to be judged for breaking international law and executing crimes against humanity, and how Russia would like to then participate or not participate in this judgment call, and what kind of a make good Russia would make for starting this aggressive war while violating any kind of UN security laws. Point 5, resolving the humanitarian crisis. Yes, absolutely. Resolving humanitarian crisis is great. Russia should return all of the people that it deported to the Russian-controlled territories. It should also return all the kids that were forcefully deported, or I would rather say kidnapped, to the territory of Russia, and then they were handed out to Russian families, completely neglecting their cultural heritage. Russia should also drop the genocidal rhetoric about denying Ukrainian culture and recognizing it as a sovereign nation with their own history and culture. Agreed completely. Point number 6, protecting civilians and prisoners of war. Yes. So as soon as Russians stop firing missiles at the cities that are full of civilians, where civilians die, because remember, all of the war is happening on the territory of Ukraine. Nothing is happening with civilians on territory of Russia. Every civilian death is happening on territory of Ukraine. So why don't Russia stop firing at the territory of Ukraine, and will also tell their mercenaries to stop torturing and mutilating Ukrainian prisoners of war, and then we'll be peachy. Point 7, keeping nuclear power plants safe. Again, agreed completely. The control over nuclear power plants should be returned to the owner of those nuclear power plants. In this case, Ukraine. So once Ukraine is back in control of the nuclear power plants that it owns by the UN law, then IAEA should send and can send any kind of monitoring mission that they want to these power plants to make sure that they're safe and working order. Agreed completely. Part number 8, reducing strategic risks. Well, I mean, yeah, absolutely. It states about non-use of nuclear weapons and oh my God, proliferation of the nuclear weapons. Absolutely, absolutely agreement. There is only one problem. There's only one party in this war that has nuclear weapons, and that party decided unilaterally to withdraw from the agreements of non-proliferation. Oh my God. They decided to make their own way in whether or not they want to decide if they want to have more nuclear weapons or not. Part number 8, facilitating grain exports. Well, here China just states completely wrong things because it describes that there is an agreement that's been reached between Ukraine, Russia, UN, and Turkey, and now the deal is not completely working. Well, to be fair, we need to be very precise about what is happening here, because what China is referring to here, the grain deal, is actually two separate deals that were agreed upon between Turkey, UN, and Ukraine, and second part between Turkey, UN, and Russia. Those are separate deals. They are not, they're bunched up together because they're kind of working together, but those are completely separate. And Ukrainian part of that deal, where Ukraine was working with UN and Turkey, was saying that Ukraine will put grain in ships and ship it to the countries that are needing it. And that part of the deal is working excellently. The part that is not working is the second part, where between Turkey, UN, and Russia is sending observers and not letting those observers view the ships in a timely fashion. They are taking multiple months to overview one ship. In that sense, it is going against the spirit of the deal, so it is sabotaging the deal. So the only deal that is not working is the deal between Turkey, UN, and Russia. So I am not sure why is this part of the war discussion, because Russia is clearly not executing on it, the deal that it signed. Part number 10, stopping unilateral sanctions. I completely agree. Sanctions hurt everyone. Moreover, sanctions are actually a reactive measure when we're talking about something things. So when countries break international law and they don't want to play by the rules that we agreed upon on this our world stage, then these countries can see a reaction to their actions when other countries say, we will not do X with you anymore. So what happened is Russia has broken a lot of rules of our world, and the world has responded by implementing certain restrictions on themselves or on Russia to then essentially not play with them, because Russia is clearly not following their agreed rules. Once Russia comes back and starts following the rules, and it pays back for the damages that it has caused by breaking those rules, we are in complete agreement that the unilateral sanctions should be indeed lifted on Russia, and we should go back to trading and interacting with Russia as a civilized state. Part number 11, please leave China alone. Part 11 says keeping industrial and supply chains stable. This is essentially China pleading for please keep the money flowing. Our economy is suffering. Don't bankrupt us. That's very hilarious. And this is basically China just begging for anything. Again, not sure what it's doing here. It's a complete nonsense. Part 12, promoting post-conflict reconstruction. Agreed. Both European Union and United States and other Western powers are in complete agreement with Ukraine that they want to help rebuild Ukraine to a big, nice, democratic and prosperous nation. There is one problem that is preventing that Russia is waging an aggressive war. So why don't Russia get the fuck out of Ukraine and we can get back to rebuilding? That's the Chinese peace plan. It's complete nonsense. There is nothing here that is worth considering. We can use any of these points for any kind of discussions. It's both vague and non-concrete enough to be used in any way that anyone wants. So take it or leave it. Good fun. I really enjoyed reading it. I had a good laugh. I hope you did as well. Guys, I'm having what you can do about negotiations with Russia is you can support the armed forces of Ukraine and you can support Ukraine generally. And to do that, we actually, in a 1 year anniversary, I and myself, together with operator Starsky, Denis Davidov, and maybe some other creator, will join the enforcer on his channel, and he will do a big charity on supporting Ukraine. So I will be joining at 10:30 EST. I believe that it's Eastern Standard Time. If it's not, I'm wrong, but it's 10:30 p.m. EST. But overall, join the Enforcers channel, watch the stream, support Ukraine. Slava Ukraini, guys. I love you all, and I'll see you next time.